Welcome to Adulting in the Modern World with Donna and Sahar, a podcast dedicated to help women catalyze their own transformation and engage in their evolution in a conscious way. Two transformational coaches share tools, processes, practices, and wisdom to support you in designing your life in a fun, joy-filled, and abundant way. This is for the woman who is invested in her evolution in an intentional way, takes responsibility for her emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and financial wellness. This is for the woman that honors the value of wisdom and growth in community. Welcome to Adulting in the Modern World.
So welcome to our first official 2021 Wisdom Nugget conversation here on Adulting in a Modern World. Today, we're going to be talking about upgrading your iOS system and what that means. And so your iOS system, what we're really talking about is your internal operating system. I didn't know I had an internal operating system until a few years back when I started to do a lot of this inner healing work where I was thinking about myself, my sense of self, putting myself together, discovering who I am, etc. And so today we're here to have this conversation because we believe that the audience that's listening to this, you're probably interested in discovering who you are, creating who you are, being curious about how you got to where you got and where you're going next. So this is for that person who's interested in sovereignty, in their self-leadership, and really ultimately adulting. So when we have conversations about adulting in the modern world, we felt like this was the first topic we wanted to talk about because it is where you're starting to become aware of you being the designer of your life. And so one of the topics that we're going to go into today is going to be about how you decided to program yourself from, just looking at your operating system and being able to see how it is that you can program yourself according to your own choices versus according to your inner child, basically, or the perceptions of your inner child. So Donna and I are here. This is a conversation that's really interesting to us because it lives at the base of our work. And it lives at the base of our personal work and our professional work because we're really interested in being adults of a modern world that raise the future generations from a perception and a place and a perspective of love or above. And we're going to talk about why that matters and why vibrations matter. But for now, we're actually going to go into learning a little bit about the mind, learning a little bit about how our internal operating system works. And Donna's going to share from her perspective, from the teachings that she's been studying, a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Sahar, and welcome everybody to this episode. In terms of upgrading your iOS, it's a really potent topic, especially at this time of the year. It's January, it's the beginning of a new year, and especially after everything globally that we've been through in the last 9 or 10 months, it's really a time to evaluate. I think a lot of people have already been evaluating who they are, what their lives are about. And now it's a great jumping off point. I mean, anytime someone is listening to this is a great jumping off point when you make a decision to accelerate your life and take it into the direction that you want, starting to design the life that you feel you want to live. And so some of the things that we're going to look at right now in this chat are based on foundational rules of the mind. So Marisa Peer, my teacher for Rapid Transformational Therapy, which is a type of hypnosis and psychotherapy, let's say, that uses techniques of NLP and cognitive behavioral therapy and many other techniques wrapped into one that really helps to dive into the subconscious and where our programming starts from a really young age of 0 to even 8 years old, a lot of our programming has been done up until that 7 to 8 year old time period in our lives. And so it's interesting to look at where things stem from, how our issues begin, where our issues begin. And I know our listeners are going to say, okay, that's great. That's all fine and dandy to look at how things started, but what do I do about it? How do I actually change it? And we're really about transformation and change. And so if we look at what Marisa Peer offers, and Marisa, who's the founder of Rapid Transformational Therapy, she's the top therapist in England. She's a real knowledge base in terms of how the mind works. And I love how she puts things really simplistically. So we're going to look at a few foundational rules of the mind, how the mind works. And one of them is that your mind does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. I repeat, your mind does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. So I often refer to the mind, in my own words, as a computer. And if this computer has been programmed many, many, many years ago, decades ago, in most of our cases, that's what your mind knows. That's how it operates. That's why we're talking about internal operating systems. Internally, my mind operates on the things that it already knows and what it thinks it wants, I want it to do. And so that stems from habits, it stems from perception, it stems from trauma, unfortunately, and it even stems from pleasant things that have happened in my life. And so all of these things rolled into one becomes, that image of who I am. And so where people get stuck, where we get stuck as humans, is how to get out of that hamster wheel of the same thoughts, the same actions, the same perceptions. And so oftentimes as humans, we get stuck on how to change the habits, how to change the perspective, how to change and get out of this hamster wheel of thoughts, these recurring thoughts, recurring actions, recurring programs that we're operating on since childhood or since adolescence. And so Sahar and I are big proponents of the methodology and or the modalities, like what am I using? And they're different things. There's never one right way. What am I using to get myself into this new perspective so that my mind that wants to do exactly what it thinks I want it to do then operates on exactly those things, the things that are going to take me into the direction of my dreams, my purpose, the way I want to function. And so another one of the rules of the mind that I think is really cool and neat is that your mind only responds to two things: the pictures that you make in your head and the words that you say to yourself. The pictures you make in your head and the words that you say to yourself. So if we break that down a tiny bit, and I'll ask Sahar, what her viewpoint is on this as well. Imagine, and that's just it, imagine, visualize, imagine and remember, actually, in this moment, remember something that you say to yourself often. So remember something, recall something in this moment that you say to yourself on a daily basis. Okay, some people speak to themselves really awfully and they say, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, that was so stupid of me. And if that is in your dialogue on a daily basis, and for some people it's almost on an hourly basis, oh, how did I do that? It's so stupid. Well, you're literally programming your mind into understanding and believing and thinking that you are not capable, that you are stupid. And we want to erase that languaging. So I know it's so simple to say, like if I had a client in front of me right now, to just tell them to erase that language is so simple to say, but how do we do it? And so if I'm using that languaging and I'm calling myself these horrible things, it develops a picture in my mind. I see myself failing. I see myself not completing what I want to do. I see myself not being up to standard. Okay. And so there's images and then there's words that we say to ourselves and that we see. And if this is on a constant repetitive cycle, I'm sorry, but you give your mind no chance to develop something new. You're constantly going back into this programming that is not helping you develop in a good way. So we're going to go to the other end of things where we are going to start developing a mind that takes us into the direction that we want. Okay. And some of these things, it just means going and doing the absolute opposite. Okay. So what is it that you want your mind to think? What is it that you want your mind to respond to?
This is so exciting. Donna and I love this space. We love living here. And the reason why is because we really are adept about the concept of evolution and joyful evolution. So this isn't work that feels hard or painful. It's actually the work that we do to experience more joy. And I myself I'm an intentional creativity teacher, coach, and artist. And I was trained by Shiloh Sophia McLeod. And the reason why I talk about this methodology is it's exactly what Donna was saying. It's the how-to. So what I use and what I've used, so something that I first want to go to is one of the core teachings that we talk about in intentional creativity is the inner voice. Because your artist self, like with the moment you come and face a canvas, you confront that voice, you hear that voice, and it's that voice that we work on to transmute and transform. And so it's that shift and transformation from the voice, from being an inner critic to being your inner muse. And when I did my graduate studies in the field of education, I actually looked at psychoanalysis and adult learning and looked at their relationships and looked at trauma and looked at the impact of how what kind of modalities can we use from the healing field as teaching tools. I had to get outside of traditional systems to get my teaching, basically my medicine basket or my tools to help me, first of all, rewire my own self, because that's where my anxiety and depression and low self-esteem and all those things used to stem from. Was that I wasn't even able to look in the mirror in my eyes for longer than a minute. When I did, I would hear that inner critic voice, and it was really hard for me to feel that. And so that was the drive. It was my inner critic that was the drive for me to succeed and get on overdrive mode. And it's not a bad thing. We need to do some of those things in order to create certain forms of security for ourselves, like the foundations and the basics, in order for us to then explore our emotional healing. But I just really want to highlight that Donna mentioned this inner voice as well. And so it's a really important wisdom nugget that we want to highlight is your inner voice. Is it operating from your inner critic, or is it operating from your inner muse? Is it operating from a voice of self-love, or is it operating from a voice of self-hate? And I know that for many powerful women, they can, you've probably achieved your empires and built your systems and all those things. And yet you may still feel some kind of sadness or emptiness or something. And you may be down the road like 10 years in this work and still be working on it. Like I've been on this path of self-recovery, self-discovery, self-love for over a decade now. And I consistently, I literally stopped working for 3 years and I just went into deep, intensive healing. And I invested so much into learning about coaching, learning about transformation, learning about personal growth and development, and from all different fields and areas and ways. And the reason why is because we feel like we need modalities that can actually help us do this in a more faster way. And not just faster, it all depends on where you're at in your journey, of course, and being compassionate with ourselves and patient with ourselves. Because I remember when I first started, I was like, oh, really, I have all this unraveling to do. I have all this reprogramming to do. I have all this stuff to look at. And it was just really painful to even be a witness to the voice of my inner critic. But now when I hear and connect with that voice of my inner critic, I'm like, oh, more places to love in myself, and places to pour compassion into and places to integrate. So it's a lifelong journey, this path of integration. But what we want to share with you all is, it's important to have tools that can help you do that reprogramming in ways. And so for myself, I use intentional creativity, as I was saying, and Donna said, you use pictures and you use words. And that's exactly what we use in intentional creativity to help create that change, because you can't just think your way out of some of these things. And Donna, can you speak to that in terms of, I think that talk therapy is important and it's helpful, but why should people be using a variety of different modalities? And what are these modalities like working on in terms of mind, body, spirit?
Yeah, I just want to jump in here on that and say that it's really a matter of perception as well. Like one modality, it might sound kind of vague, but it's working on your perception, how you perceive things, how you see things, and how you look at situations, which then affects how you react to them. And then if we change our perception and we change our reaction, the end result will actually be different. So it could be as simple as that formula, and then, okay, how? So talk therapy, I think, is fabulous. A lot of people use it as a form of companionship, like having someone in their lives that they can talk to on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis and share their deepest hopes and dreams and desires and issues. And I think it's a wonderful platform for that. But what happens is true healing in that respect, in that form, may take decades, may take a lifetime, and in some cases may never even happen. Some healing will occur, but what we want is we want a transformation that is lasting, a transformation that you can see and feel and hear and understand from literally this moment. And that's what I want to offer people in this actual podcast, is a literal transformation right now. So, talk therapy can be as, simple as talking with a friend, talking with a girlfriend, sharing your deep feelings, which is super important because that helps build community and trust. And we all need that. And in terms of creating healing for yourself, we do need to dive into other modalities. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be Tai Chi, it could be any form of spirituality and spiritual practice. It could be song, dance, fitness.
Can I ask Donna why these modalities and how they relate to the witness self, like creating that self that witnesses the story self or the ego self? Can you tell the audience the connection? Because I think you're making it in your brain. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When I had my fitness studio, which was really a yoga studio, one of the most potent things that would happen on a daily and or weekly basis would be in a traditional yoga class, at least one client in maybe every class would have some kind of breakthrough. We don't call them breakdowns anymore. Sahar and I call them breakthroughs. And so a client would maybe cry or sob or just kind of be really quiet on their mat after class and be one of the last to leave. And what would happen there is they were witnessing something. They were witnessing within themselves a clearing, or something was coming through. And in that clearing would come tears or a realization or an understanding or a knowing. And this is what we're talking about today. The mind needs to understand. And I think that's why people go to, and undergo talk therapy, is because they're trying to understand what happened. And that's a key component. What I'm offering is that the understanding can actually happen in a matter of minutes or hours or days. And then we move to healing. And so let's take this client that's curled up in balasana and crying over, some trauma that they went through. And now they're feeling it in the physical body. They're feeling the memory, and then they're releasing through tears or, just like a sense of being quiet. Now that person has literally already begun transforming and changing. And, I use yoga as an example, and for some people that's so cliche, but it does happen, the fireman, and I'm using an actual example, the fireman that's completely fit and coming to yoga class and literally trembling in standing poses, trembling and shaking, because inside he has his own inner fears, inner trauma, and that's exploring itself through the body. So that's one form of witnessing. And another form is literally being able to stop ourselves and see and hear the thoughts and the images that we have. That's another form of witnessing. And some people try to cure that or therapy that with practices like affirmation and gratitude, which I think are wonderful components that someone can add to their day. And I have a feeling, though, now in 2021, that we are way beyond that in terms of how we can transform ourselves. Okay, so affirmations may be nice, but now we're going for great and amazing. And what does that mean? Now we need to, this upgrade of our iOS is really about getting down to those core beliefs, those core issues. What is it that caused me to not be able, to use Sahar's example, which is so personal, to not be able to look myself in the mirror? What am I facing there? And in that example, that person, as Sahar did for years, needs to get down to the core issue. Where did this stem from? At what age did I begin to not value myself or not find worth? And these are common things that all humans feel to some degree. And when we get to that core belief, that's the understanding. Okay, this stemmed from here and at this time. So then I can rationalize it with my adult brain and understand. And then guess what, Sahar? I can leave it. I don't have to talk about it in therapy for the next decade. So I can understand it and leave it. And then the third rule of the mind that we're going to look at today is that your mind loves what is familiar and hates what is unfamiliar. So if I keep going back to that familiar, my mind is happy because it keeps doing something that it understands. But if I want to upgrade, and I'm ready to upgrade, and I'm ready to catapult myself into the new, what is the new for me? Better job, better relationship, better feeling about myself, a feeling of contentment in my life, I think is where a lot of people want to go. Then I actually have to start doing things that are unfamiliar. And that's going to create discomfort for all of us. But that discomfort doesn't last long. It might last days, it might last weeks, right? Maybe I'm waking up earlier. Maybe I'm introducing a fitness regimen that could be really small, like our, 10 or 15 minute segments of fitness. But at first it's going to be uncomfortable. And I want people to understand that, loving the discomfort, like when you're going for a deep tissue massage and it actually hurts. But after 2 days, you feel phenomenal. That's the discomfort I want people to start getting used to, because it will take some discomfort to change.
I think it'll take, I don't know if it's discomfort, but I think it's actual work of change, right? Which means it's something different. And I think it's really powerful. I think when we tie in the concept of adulting to this, we also are saying that the people that we're speaking to that I feel like are interested in these types of conversations are people who feel like they have a sense of ethical responsibility and ability of self-leadership, so that they can then contribute to society on a scale that feels good. And that could mean raising children, and that could mean being a CEO of a company, and it could mean being both, and it could mean being none of that. And it's just the sense of, if you're taking responsibility for yourself, you're actually helping society. And so I think as we're in the year of 2021, we are thinking a lot about the direction of the world. And so we have to start by taking self-responsibility to ask the direction of our own world, right? And so living your best life, you're actually contributing to increasing the vibration on the planet. And I know this sounds so cliche, and my rational brain is always like, what? But my hope and my goal and my dream every single day is healing, so that I can live in joy, and that I can live in love, and that I can live in wellness. And that's my revolution. Like, my evolution is my revolution. And that's what we're hoping for you all, that, this is a wisdom nugget that we wanted to drop, and just to talk about the importance of transformation and the importance of upgrading your iOS, and to just become aware of, what voice is it that's designing that.
Well, I think one of the key nuggets from today's podcast, Sahar, is that when we develop and use our emotional intelligence, then we are no longer reacting from wounding and trauma. When we develop this body of intelligence within us on an emotional level, we're actually designing and creating how we want to be as humans. And that's the reprogramming, that's the upgrading, in my opinion. So I think we did a great job today in terms of looking at this topic, surrounding it with some, wisdom and insights and our own personal stories. So I hope people got a lot out of that today. And I'd love for folks to even comment and tell us, your journey and your stories and how you plan to upgrade your own internal operating system. I'd love to hear from folks about that, as well as our next episode. So every week we're coming to you with a new topic, and next week we'll be discussing the power of storytelling. And no, I'm not talking about story time at the library with 5-year-olds. I'm talking about the stories that you tell yourself, as well as the stories that are creating your future and your present, really. So we're signing off from episode 2 from this really great chat, and we will see you next week.